Happy Lag Bomer. Good afternoon. It's 12:15 on Tuesday. Time for our weekly Lunch and Learn. Today's Lunch and Learn is taking place on a special day on the Jewish calendar. It is Lag Bomer, a significant day, a minor holiday on the Jewish calendar. And we'll learn about it very soon. Hi, Jody and Roy. We're getting ready to begin our weekly Lunch and Learn. And because today is Tuesday, and today is Lag Bomer, it's an extra special time to study Torah, as we will learn about this special holiday of Lag Bomer. Hi, Amy. We'll begin shortly. If you would like to follow along with the source sheet, you can check your email or download from the link on this post. And we're getting ready to begin. Usually Lag Bomer, we have a big celebration. Hi, Judy and Ira. We have a big celebration. Past couple of years, I've been doing it here on the lawn, on Lime Avenue, where we have fun for the kids, moon bounces, popcorn, cotton candy, petting zoo, and entertainment. Last year we had this guy balancing, I think it was 3 eggs, one on top of the other, on his nose or on a little stick on his mouth or something. It was really cool. Every year we have something else. Unfortunately, for us to all gather like that would not be the right thing to do at this time. Good morning, Michael. Good afternoon, Michael and Maureen. Hi, Jack. But nonetheless, it's a special day. It's Lag Bomer. There are multiple online and virtual Lag Bomer gatherings. You can check one out after on Chabad.org. I believe there's a big one. For the children, we'll have something later. But here we are gathering together to study Torah, our weekly Lunch and Learn. Once again, you can download and print out the source sheet to follow along. Today, we're going to learn about what this day means to us, what's the significance to Lag Bomer, what it means, and of course some relevant lessons to us, not just learning history, not just learning ideas, but ideals and how these things translate into helping us have a more meaningful life, a more meaningful day. Excuse me. Say a bracha here, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה b'dvaro. You can take a moment to share this post so others can join in. I'm just going to share it here to allow more people to join and study along with us. And we'll be ready to begin in just a moment. Let's see if we can do this. If you have something, you have an opportunity to study Torah, you can join. You can invite others to join as well. Okay. Hi, Vicky. Hi, Rachalea. Welcome back. We missed you for a few weeks. Nice to see you. And we are ready. Hi, Gary. Chag Sameach. Happy holiday. Happy Lag Bomer to everybody. It's a very exciting day. Very fun day. Going back, memories since I was a young child. Lag Bomer was a day we all look forward to. We would close our books in school, go out into the field and play and have barbecues and celebrate and join together. What we're going to do right now for the next 60 minutes or so, we're going to learn what this holiday is all about, what we are marking on this day, Hi Don, and how we observe this day. Here we go. So if you have your source sheet, we'll take a look at source number 1. So the first thing we're going to do before we look inside is Lag Bomer is a holiday. Hi Igor. It's not a holiday like Passover that the Torah itself in the Bible, it's not a biblical holiday. It is not a day where we refrain from any kinds of work. It is just a significant day, a special day for which hundreds of years, even we'll see close to 2,000 years, this was a significant day, a special day. But it's more of a customary kind of holiday, a holiday that Jewish people themselves sort of made this day into a holiday because of the things that happened. And nonetheless, it's a significant day. And let's first talk about, we're going to divide this class into 4 sections. The first section, we'll talk about the actual name of the holiday. What does Lag BaOmer actually mean? Right, so let's say every holiday has its name. So Hanukkah in Hebrew actually means dedication, because they rededicated the temple after they won the war against the Greeks who desecrated the temple. They built a new menorah and they rededicated everything. So Chanukah in Hebrew means like Chanukat Habayit, is a housewarming. When you dedicate a home, when you buy a new home or move into a new home. And similarly, they dedicated the temple. And so too every holiday, has its name. What does Lag BaOmer actually mean? Hi, Irina. So let's take it 2 parts. Lag BaOmer. Lag is fairly simple. Lag is 2 Hebrew letters, Lamed and Gimel. Lag. Lamed Gimel, you read the 2 letters together as Lag. What is Lag? What is Lamed and Gimel? So every letter in the alphabet has a number. We mentioned this more than once. It's called in Hebrew Gematria. Has a numerical value. So Aleph is 1, Yud is 10, Samach is 60, Kuf is 100. So Lamed, the Hebrew letter Lamed, which is similar to El, Lamed is the number 30. And Gimel, the 3rd letter, Aleph, Bet, and Vet are the same, or twins. Gimel is number 3. So it's 30 and 3. Lamed Gimel, 33. So Lag is 33. Now what's BaOmer? BaOmer means it's the 33 to the Omer. What does Omer actually mean? So let's take a look inside just to give us an understanding of the name, and then we'll get into what actually happened on this day. Hi, Gail. We're taking a look at source number 1. Going to the Torah, we read this last week in the Torah, or we studied this last week. I'm not sure, we didn't read it here in our synagogue, but this portion was studied. Source number 1 in the book of Leviticus, you shall bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the Kohen. On the morrow of the first day of the Passover festival, the 16th day of Nisan. Until that very day, you shall eat no bread or parched grain. Okay, so this is a quote from the Torah, which tells us a mitzvah when the Jewish people are going to enter the land of Israel after 40 years wandering in the desert. They're going to settle the land. Instead of eating the manna, which fell to the Jews in the desert, they're going to have to work the land to plow and sow and harvest, and things are going to grow, and they're going to have to make flour and make bread to survive, to sustain themselves. They're not going to have the manna. Tells us the Torah that every year, in the season around Passover time, when the harvest comes and things begin to grow, so all the Jewish people should refrain from benefiting from the new crop until the first bundle, the first sheaf is like a bundle of grain, is brought as an offering to the Kohen, to the priest in the temple. It's brought up into Jerusalem as an offering to God. That's what the mitzvah is saying. Look back again. You shall bring the first sheaf, the first bundle of the new crop, every year, the season of the harvest, to the Kohen. Kohen is the ones working in the temple, the priests, as an offering. Parts of it are woven in front of the altar, and then the Kohens representatives of God take part in eating it. That's the mitzvah. When is it brought? It's brought on the first day on the morrow, on the 2nd day of Passover. Passover is a 7-day holiday, or we do here 8 days, but on the first day is sacred. On the second day, this offering is brought. They would bring one from the whole country of Israel, the whole land of Israel, one on behalf of all the Jewish people. Now, until that offering is brought, so if a couple days before already people have their fields, their harvest ready, they should refrain from using it for their personal use until this offering is brought. So the 16th of Nisan, when this offering was first brought to God, the first one, that permitted everybody to partake and use their grain from their fields. And this was, and until that day, was forbidden to have any bread which was made from the grain or parched grain, whether it was baked or, parched or roasted somewhat. And the idea is, not to get into it now, it's not the topic for today, but the idea is that, when they had the manna in the desert, it was very recognizable. It was felt very easily how everything comes from God. But once you work hard, they worked hard all winter, sowing and plowing and sowing and working the land. One might think when it comes to the harvest time, wow, look how hard I worked. This is all my achievement. I toiled. So God says, wait a second. I also had a part in this. I helped this grow. And the first thing you should do before using it for yourself, take the best, the first one, and bring it as an offering. It was a reminder to the Jewish people that they cannot they cannot benefit from it until they first give it to Hashem, to God, recognizing that ultimately it is coming from God, and we should be thankful and appreciative to Hashem for giving us all this bounty. That is the idea. Now, the word Omer is the measurement of this bundle. The word Omer, it was about 2 grams that they would cut. It was actually barley. The first offering was of barley, which barley is is a crop which comes in earlier than wheat. And Omer, that's what Omer means. Omer is the way the Torah refers to this measurement of this sheaf, this bundle of barley that was brought up as an offering. That's the Omer. So the Omer is this offering that was brought up on the 16th day of Nisan. 15th day is the first day of Passover. On the morrow, on the day after the first day of Passover, that's when this Omer was brought up. And that's what Omer means. So what does it mean, Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer? Let's take a look at source number 2. The Torah continues, after you bring up this Omer, from the day on which you bring the sheaf, you shall count 7 weeks. You must count until the day after the 7th week, 50 days. On that same day, you shall hold a celebration. It shall be a sacred occasion for you. The Torah says, in addition to the mitzvah, to the instruction of bringing up this offering on the 16th day of Nisan, then begins a second mitzvah, a mitzvah of Sephira. Sephira means to count. The counting from the day of the Omer, from when this Omer, this measurement, this bundle was brought up as an offering from the first of the crop, of the new crop, you shall count 7 weeks. How much is 7 times 7? 49. It reminds me of the story of Mr. Sam. He never bought a lottery ticket. Many years. Finally, his family and friends convinced him to go and purchase a lottery ticket. So he goes, buys a ticket, and lo and behold, he wins the lottery. $2 million. His family and friends come over to him, they wish him Mazel Tov. And they tell him, how did you know the first time you buy a ticket right away, that's it, you win? What's your secret? So Mr. Sam says, I'll tell you, it was a little bit of mazel, a little bit of luck, and a little bit of seichel, of logic. Really? Tell us, what happened? How did you figure this out? So he says, let me start with the seichel part, the logic part. I figured, what's a lucky number? As a Jewish guy, what's a lucky number? Number 7. 7 is Shabbos. Shabbos is the Saturday, is the 7th day of the week. It's a holy day for the Jews. So I figured if 7 is a good number, 7 times 7 is even a better number. It's the luckiest number. So they tell him, Sam, but 7 times 7 is 49, and the winning number was 48. So Mr. Sam says, aha, that's where the mazel comes in. That's where the luck comes in. I was never too good at math. So he picked 48, then he won. Okay, that's for the joke. 7 times 7 is 49. 7 weeks we have a mitzvah to count after the bringing of the Omer. Oh, I see the feedback now. Thank you. 7 times 7, they had a mitzvah to count for 7 weeks. Counting day number 1 from the Omer, 2 days from the Omer, 3 days from the Omer, until they finish counting 49 days, 7 weeks. And the 50th day is the holiday of Shavuos. That's the next major biblical holiday on the 50th day from the second day of Passover, which is when the Torah was given. We commemorate the giving of the Torah. That's a whole other discussion. So we have this mitzvah of Sephira, which means to count. Every day we count. And now we understand what Lag BaOmer means. Lag is 33, we said. Lag is Lamed Gimel, 30 and 3. It's the 33rd day of the Omer. So Lag BaOmer is just a day, how we refer to this day. It's actually the 18th day of the month of Iyar, the Jewish month of Iyar. Every year on the Jewish calendar, comes out on the same day. It's always the 18th day of Iyar, which coincides with the 33rd day of the Omer, the 33rd day of counting the Omer. We still do this today, even though we don't have a temple and we don't have an Omer offering being brought up on the second day of Passover. Nonetheless, we still count. Every evening we count. And last night, which is the beginning of today, we counted 33 days to the Omer. Lag BaOmer, 33 days into the Omer count. So Lag BaOmer is just a description, a way how we refer to this day. It's the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. We're about 2 weeks to the end, to the holiday of Shavuos, a little bit more than 2 weeks. And then we'll have another holiday. But today is Lag BaOmer. So what is special about this day? Today is Lag BaOmer. Happy Lag BaOmer. Those that join, Yana and Vicky and Roman, everybody watching here, Mark. What is so special about this day? So we have our source sheet. You can download it and print it out to follow along. What happened on Lag BaOmer? And there are two central things that happened, and we're going to go briefly through each of these and see how they can be relevant to us living hundreds of years after these stories happened. Last week we studied about a great rabbi, a personality, Jewish sage, Rabbi Akiva. We learned about his life. We learned how he began studying Torah, and he made his way up the ladder and became the leading sage of his time. He was the primary teacher and transmitter of the teachings of the Torah. Everybody had the writings of the Torah, the scriptures, the 5 books of Moses and the books of the prophets, but all of the traditions, all of the teachings, all of the oral law, the explanations, and the ideas behind of the Torah, which are not explicit in the Torah, those were passed down from teacher to student. And Rabbi Akiva was the primary teacher. And he built his yeshiva for many, many years, 24 years. He built up his yeshiva, and he had lots of students. Tells us the Talmud, source number 3, Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students. So, hope we all have good mazel and we can figure out that's 24,000. 24,000 students, and they all died in one period of time, and the world was desolate of Torah. All of them died in the period from Passover until Shavuos. That's what the Talmud records. Rabbi Akiva built up this yeshiva. I believe his yeshiva was in Bnei Brak, still a city today in Israel. And 24,000 students, and he was the primary teacher, and these students were studying Torah from the great sage of the generation. And what happened, the Talmud says, is that in a short period of time, there was a plague, and all of these 24,000 students died. In 1 year, in one couple of weeks. During the time between Pesach, Passover, and Shavuos, during the times of Sephir, when we count the Omer, this period, that's when they all died out. Nobody else died. They died. So it's a sad time. Especially when anybody dies, it's a sad time. Especially when a large number of people die, as we feel now. And especially the people that died, for the Jewish people, it was a great blow. Source 4, their death was a terrible blow to the future of the Jewish people. The very people who were expected to ensure the transmission of the oral law were now dead. I mean, after Rabbi Akiva's passing, he's not going to live forever. He may have lived a long life, but these 24,000 students were expected to be the transmitters to pass on these oral teachings of the Torah to the next generation. And although Rabbi Akiva managed to transmit the Torah to 5 new students, as we will, we're still around today and we still have the Torah, the teachings of the Torah, as we'll see later, he did succeed in teaching it to 5 new students, but the plague impacted the breadth of knowledge that could have been transmitted and preserved by these sages. So the fact is that this plague, which wiped out in a short period of time 24,000 students, which were the leaders, the teachers, the future teachers of all the Jewish people, That was an extremely hard blow to the Jewish nation, and it came at a time shortly after the destruction of the Second Temple, when the Romans were crushing the Jewish settlement in Israel, and it was a particularly hard time. And when this came along, it was a especially hard time, and the sages of the time enacted certain laws of mourning to be observed every year during this period of time when this plague happened. And that's what we refer to the days of Sephira, because they coincide with the time when we count the Omer. That's when they died. And just as we should never have to live through this, but if a close member of one's family, one of his 7 immediate relatives, a father or mother, brother, sister, son or daughter, or husband or wife, a spouse, dies, there is the Shiva period, and then there's the 30-day period and a year period when one mourns. It is a law from the Torah that one should mourn, and there are specific restrictions, and those similar to that, the rabbis enacted for all of the Jewish people to mourn during this period. And I'll take a look in source number 5, some of the things that the rabbis said. Number 1, don't schedule weddings. Weddings is a joyous occasion. It's not the time for such things. Don't take haircuts. So, just like someone who's in mourning might not shave or make themselves look beautiful. It's not the time. Don't listen to live music. Avoid purchasing and wearing new garments. Obviously means something extraordinary, something really special, which brings lots of joy. It's a time of sadness. And that's what, until today, we don't have weddings during this time, from between Pesach and on. So it was a sad time. What does this have to do with Lag BaOmer? We'll get to that in a moment. But let's talk about for a moment, why did they die? So it was a plague, and we can understand it. Unfortunately, we can relate to it a little bit, seeing what's going on now. It was a plague. This plague targeted not everybody. It targeted specifically the 24,000 students of the yeshiva, of the house of study of Rabbi Akiva. Now, while the commentaries in the Talmud, it says how exactly they died, did they have a specific disease, a sickness, or something? But the fact is that only these people died. And the Talmud says, why did they die? What was the spiritual cause for their death? Source 6, they died because they did not treat each other with respect. The students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived in the 1st and 2nd century of the Common Era. The students of Rabbi Akiva did not treat each other with respect. And this is pretty perplexing, because we studied last week that Rabbi Akiva was the teacher, was the one that spoke about Avas Yisrael, love of your fellow. And he said this is a great principle of the Torah, this is what it's all about. How can it be that Rabbi Akiva's students, out of all people, would be the ones who would not demonstrate having love and kindness for each other? They're his students, and if they're their students, then they have to be a student in everything that he teaches, and not just in their minds intellectually grasping his teachings, but internalizing. Right? A teacher in Hebrew is called a mora. Mora doesn't just mean someone who gives information. A teacher is a guide. Mora means a guide, a role model. And Rabbi Akiva demonstrated this love for others, and his students, being called students, Torah says they're their students. So they must have loved each other. What does it mean they did not treat each other with respect? So the commentaries talk here about one explanation is the literal words, the words that Talmud uses, is that they did not respect each other. It does not say they did not love each other. There's a big difference between love and respect. Let's take a look at source number 7. Love is a powerful emotion that drives empathy and concern for others. We love them, we care for them, and we're concerned for them, we feel them. But too much love can mean that we impose our ways of thinking on our beloved. If the love is not tempered by respect, if there's just love, it can sometimes be overbearing. It can be, I love you so much
How can you not do as I think is correct? Let's continue. Respect gives the people we love the space they need to make their own decisions and walk their own path. We need to respect them and their opinions, even if we don't agree with them. So just having love without respect sometimes can, because we love them so much, we want them to do what we feel is correct and what we feel is right, and we might impose that on them. Respect is giving them the space. Yes, we love them, but we also respect their space and recognize that the other person might have another opinion. They are different than us. No two people think alike. And even if they don't agree with us, nonetheless, not just we continue to love them, but we respect them, giving them the space to make their own decisions. The students, let's go a little bit further. Source number 8. The key to it now. Source number 8. The key to a healthy relationship is to find a proper balance between love and respect. Because boundless love is smothering and invasive, and respect alone is distant and uncaring. So respect is not either good. You can't just have respect, because you might be driving over the bridge and see someone about to jump off, and you say, "Oh, I got to respect his decision." But that's no love. You need to love the person and know that this is very clear that the best for him or her is to stop that from happening. Or you might see someone having poison. Oh, I need to respect their decision. No, we need to look out for them. But too much love without respect is not either good. So a healthy relationship is a good balance of love and respect. Respect and love. We need to respect them, but we also need to love them. And we need to make sure that they're, not totally on, their path, their own path that they're choosing is not a dangerous one. So it's a balance. Now the students of Rabbi Akiva, they did love each other. They were students of Rabbi Akiva who stood for love, who personified love and taught love, and taught how Avat Yisrael, loving each other, is a fundamental principle and an all-inclusive principle of the Torah. But because they loved each other, and they were lacking respect for each other, they all understood their teacher's lessons. Their teacher, when he taught, they each understood it in a different way. Each of them grasped it in a bit of a different way and internalized it a little bit differently. And because they loved their friends and they saw how their friends interpreted it differently than they understood was correct, they tried to impose their way and their understanding of their teacher's teachings. They tried to impose that on each other. And when that person had a different path, a different understanding, and they lacked the respect to give them their space and understand that even if I don't agree with their way of understanding, it is still a valid one, and I must give them their space. That was their issue. That's what was lacking. The Talmud says they did not respect each other. They loved each other, but their love was not tempered, was not guided by respect. And they lacked, of course, they would help each other out. If somebody was in pain, they loved each other. But what was lacking was the proper honor and respect for the other person's opinion, for the other person's way of understanding their teacher's lessons. And being the great men that they were, that brought upon them a plague. And there's lots to talk about. Is it so severe that they have to all die? That's a discussion for another time. That's Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is the day when this plague stopped, when this plague ceased. Yes, it was a sad time, and we continue to mourn them every year. 24,000 students died during this period. And as the Talmud says, the land was desolate of Torah. This was the leading yeshiva. And it was a very sad time for the Jewish people. But Lag BaOmer is a day when the plague ceased. They were able to, there were no more deaths. And therefore, these restrictions are lifted. We make weddings on this day, and we have a custom of not cutting the hair of a young boy until they're 3 years old, what we call upshernish. And on this day, all the boys that had their third birthday in the past couple of weeks can now have their hair cutting ceremony on this day. We can have live music and buy new clothes. It's a happy time. It's a time when the restrictions are lifted, but also a time to sort of rectify the cause for their death. It is a day of Jewish unity, a day of loving each other and primarily respecting each other, recognizing that we're not all the same. We are different. God made each and every one of us different. Just like our fingerprints are none the same, so too our way of thinking is slightly different. Everybody, or vastly different. We understand things differently. We perceive things differently, and we need to learn not just to love each other, but to respect each other, to honor each other, to give each other the space and recognize where they're coming from, and that there is another opinion. But respect is not enough. We also got to love each other, right? So we need to have a healthy balance. Source number 9, we celebrate the end of the plague of Lag BaOmer and reflect on the importance of healthy relationships. We must practice tempering our love with respect and our respect with love, because just respect without love is uncaring, right? It is distant. We need to be close to each other, but there needs to be a balance. Like this mother once said, my daughter claims that I'm intruding on her privacy. I mean, at least that's what she wrote in her diary. Diaries, at least, used to be a private thing. Right? You have to respect their privacy. Okay, now we understand the first special thing. The first thing that happened on the 33rd day, Lag BaOmer, of the counting of the Omer, is that the plague ceased, the students stopped dying, and the way we combat that, the way we sort of or rectify this, is that the theme of this holiday is Jewish unity. Gathering together, we make barbecues, the community gets together, children get together, it's not so serious and strict studying in school, we go out to the field, and we gather together, we're united, whatever background we are, we're connected. That is the way we rectify what brought on the result of this terrible plague during that time. That is reason number 1. But actually the primary reason is what we're going to learn now. The second thing that happened. And here we go. Source number 10. Kabbalah. Ever heard of that word? The Kabbalah. Or Kabbalah. In recent years has been made very famous. What is Kabbalah? So let's continue on the story of Rabbi Akiva, and we'll talk primarily about one of his students, Rabbi Akiva. Source number 10, the Talmud continues to tell us, after 24,000 of his students perished in a short time. You can imagine, he wasn't a young man at the time. He was about 65 years old, or maybe even older. And he built up this whole yeshiva, can you imagine? Thousands of students, he invested in them, he taught them, these were going to be the future teachers, the future transmitters of the Torah to the next generation. And all was lost in a short time. 24,000 students. And Rabbi Akiva strengthened himself. As the Talmud says, Rabbi Akiva came to our rabbis in the south of Israel and taught them the Torah. Continued. He found 5 students. They were Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and Rabbi Elazar. They preserved the Torah in that difficult time. Rabbi Akiva, thanks to him that he pushed himself, even after all was lost, he didn't give up, and he tried again. And although, as we mentioned, you can't compare 5 to 24,000, then nonetheless, these 5 preserved the Torah. We'll talk about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So let me just explain here. His name was Shimon, Rabbi Shimon. Bar is like Ben. We say somebody Ben, the son of. Bat means the daughter of. So in Aramaic, Bar means son. Ben is in Hebrew. Bar mitzvah is the Aramaic sort of way of saying it. Bar mitzvah. A son of mitzvah. Someone who is a boy who is now obligated to do the mitzvahs when he turns 13. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Yochai was his father. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and in short, we call him Rashbi. Rashbi is 4 Hebrew letters: Resh for Rabbi, Shin for Shimon, Beis Bar, and Yud for Yochai. Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Let's just call him Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon was one of the 5 students who received the Torah, the teachings of the Torah, from his teacher, his great teacher, Rabbi Akiva. Let's turn the page. Source 11. Rabbi Akiva taught the entire Torah to all 5 students, but he trained each one to specialize in one area of the Torah. The student to whom he taught the esoteric secrets of the Torah was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So the Torah has lots of parts to it. And, there's the scriptures, there's the mitzvahs, there's the deeper ideas to the mitzvahs, there's the law, there's different areas of law. And, of course, he taught all of them to all 5, but each one specialized. And we have that till today, different rabbis, everybody sort of knows the basics, but then there are certain rabbis that are experts in specific areas. In medical, if somebody has a medical question, how it works with Jewish law, they'll ask an expert in that. Rabbi Brickman is one such example. The rabbi would need to have a better understanding of biology and medicine. And there are some rabbis that their expertise is in making an eruv. Eruv would mean to, in order to be able to carry from one domain to another domain on Shabbos, like we have here in Sigay, to make such a eruv, you would need to be an expert because the laws are very intricate. And so on, different areas of halacha, you'll have different experts. Not every rabbi could deal with a beth din, like a real monetary kind of issue. So different rabbis are expert in different areas. And so too, with these 5 rabbis, Rabbi Shimon was an expert in halacha, but as well mainly in Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the secret teachings of the Torah. Esoteric. Esoteric means something which is not for everybody. And for the Kabbalah literally means tradition. It means something which was passed down sort of secretly to individuals. So Moses taught all the Jewish people the laws of the Torah, the 613 laws of the Torah and their explanations, but specific people that were worthy of it were taught the secrets of the Torah, like what goes on in the higher worlds and the angels and all that gets accomplished, the deeper meanings of the Torah and the purpose of creation and this about souls and reincarnation, all these kind of things. Those things were given over to specific great people, and Rabbi Shimon was the one that Rabbi Akiva gave this over to. And Rabbi Shimon took it to a new level. As we see in source number 12, the first to disseminate the teachings of Kabbalah was Rabbi Shimon. The most significant revelation came about on the day of Rabbi Shimon's passing, on which he expounded for many hours on the most intimate secrets of the divine wisdom. That day was Lag BaOmer. So many years later, Rabbi Shimon passed away after the plague ceased. Many years later, Rabbi Akiva taught him, and Rabbi Shimon himself passed away on Lag BaOmer. So this day commemorates the passing of this great sage, Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Shimon received this from his teacher, Rabbi Akiva, and he was the first to disseminate these teachings, not just to pass it down to individuals in small groups, but to teach it to a larger circle of students. And in turn, these mystical teachings became more and more wide, known and prevalent by the students and studied by the students. These are the mystical teachings of Kabbalah during his lifetime, and specifically the great teachings was on the last day of his life, on the day of his passing, on this day today, Lag BaOmer, about 1800 years ago. On this day, for the hours before his passing, he taught and taught for many hours, revealing the mystical teachings of the Torah to his group of students. His teachings, specifically of the day of his passing, were recorded in the book of Zohar. Many of his teachings, and there's one section there that was given over and revealed on the day of his passing. Zohar was recorded in the book of the Zohar by his students. Zohar means radiance, shining, light, because this is the light of the Torah. This gives light, it breathes life and gives light, and it illuminates all the Torah that we know. It gives us the secrets behind it. And in turn illuminates our lives. Rabbi Shimon lived in the period after the destruction of the temple. As we mentioned, it was a very sad and hard time for the Jewish people. They didn't have the temple. They didn't see and experience God sort of in a real way. There was no sacrifices and all the things that went on in the temple. And at this time, it began to reveal the deeper ideas of the Torah, the things that go beyond what our eyes can see, encouraging and giving meaning to the Jewish people after the destruction of the temple, that these things continue. Spirituality is still there, and we can tap into it. This is the idea of the Kabbalah. These are recorded in the book of Zohar. And today was the day when much of that was revealed. Let's take a look into the book of Zohar. It's written in Aramaic, hard to understand exactly. It's on the Torah. Hi, Brian. It goes according to the Torah portions. It had stories in there, teachings in there, and one section there is what he said when he prepared to reveal these great teachings on the day of his passing. And we have a quote here in English translating. It's really pretty mystical, but here is what his students, I believe it was Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Chia, those were some of the students of Rabbi Shimon who recorded these words of Rabbi Shimon. Source 13. Until today, these were concealed because I was afraid to reveal them. But now they have been revealed in the presence of the Sacred One, of God. I did not reveal this for my glory, rather because I see that God and all the holy souls are present, and all have consented to the revelation of these secrets. I see that they are all here to exult in my joy. Now, we can't really see souls and these kind of things, but Rabbi Shimon, being the great mystic that he was able to see these things. And I see they are all here to exult in my joy. These are the words he says shortly before his passing. And he began to reveal, as he says, he has permission to reveal these great secrets of the Torah. And he began to talk and talk and talk, and it's amazing description there, how his face shined. There was a light shining from him and around his bed where he was laying. A fire was, the way the Zohar says, that there was like a fire burning, a light shining from his face. They couldn't look at him. He was so holy looking. This was on the day of his passing. Today, on the day of Lag BaOmer. So today is really the day that the secrets of the Torah were revealed in a great way. Just as we celebrate Shavuos coming up, the day the Torah was given to us, that's like the revealed part of the Torah. Today is a celebration of the revelation of the secrets of the Torah, which is also a part of the Torah. The day of the passing of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon is buried. Shortly after revealing all of these great secrets, he passed away. And the Zohar goes on to describe his funeral in a very mystical and holy way. He is buried in Meron, in a town in Israel. And I was by his grave 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago. I was studying in Israel at the time, and went up to his grave. I believe at that time they said there was about 500,000 people come up to his grave all day and all night. Just Google Meron, M-E-R-O-N, Lag BaOmer. You'll see the dancing, huge bonfires, and music. It's really people coming to visit his grave. It's very special. That's the second significant thing. And the question is really, so what exactly are we celebrating? So we're celebrating the revelation of the secrets of the Torah, which a lot of the ideas of the Kabbalah, maybe we can't understand everything it says there, they're very lofty and using different terms, but many principles, many ideas that are mentioned in the Zohar are these ideas are regular things that we talk about, and they're sourced in the Zohar. They're sourced in the mystical teachings of the Torah. So we definitely benefit from this a lot. So it's a day of celebration. And even though it's a day that he passed away, we'll see now in the final section how even though he passed away, it is a day of celebration because he passed away. Let's take a look at source number 14. When the Zohar describes his passing, his funeral, they write, source 14, they heard a heavenly voice. Now, I didn't write this. You can check it up in the book of Zohar, which is accepted universally by all Jewish people as an authentic book. They heard a heavenly voice proclaim, "Arise and gather for the rejoicing of Rabbi Shimon. May he come in peace." Quite strange. The rejoicing of Rabbi Shimon. As Rabbi Shimon himself said before, that they all came to exult in my joy. I mean, he's passing away. What's the joy? It's his funeral. And the voice is saying the rejoicing of Rabbi Shimon. Actually, the word in Aramaic that the Zohar uses is Hilula. Hilula actually means like a wedding celebration. Now, generally a wedding celebration is very different than a funeral procession. It's very different. And here the Zohar is referring to Rabbi Shimon's funeral as a wedding celebration, a happy time. Source 15, although the day of passing is sad for family and friends who mourn the earthly absence of their loved one, it is a day of immense joy for the soul. This is true of all people. But it is especially evident when a person as righteous and as holy as Rabbi Shimon passes away. Since his life on earth was driven and dominated by his soul's connection with God, the soul's joy over returning to heaven and strengthening this connection was manifestly evident to all. So we're comprised of a body and soul. When a person passes on, they conclude their life in this world, their unity, their marriage to their body, the soul ascends to heaven. Yes, maybe the soul feels the pain of their loved ones that are left behind, but the soul continues to exist and it continues to feel and look out for their loved ones. And the soul has a joy that the soul is now free from the body, although it cannot continue to achieve, but nonetheless it is connecting to its source, it is connecting back to God. That's what the soul is, a spiritual being. For every person, every soul, it is joyful. Specifically, by Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon's whole life, he studied the Kabbalah. He studied, yes, he lived a life with a body, and he ate and he drank and he slept. But his life was a very spiritual life. His life was dedicated to Torah study, to spirituality, to teaching. That was his specialty. That was his area that he specialized in. That was his mission for life. And we see this in a fascinating story, which we always tell over on Lag Bomer. Rabbi Shimon, as we mentioned, lived during the Roman period. The Roman era, when the Romans ruled and governed the land of Israel. They destroyed the Second Temple by a man named Titus. And there were many harsh decrees. We spoke last week about Rabbi Akiva's passing. And Rabbi Shimon one time was having a discussion with some of his colleagues, Rabbi Yossi, as we saw, Rabbi Yehuda, the ones that he studied with. And Rabbi Shimon criticized the Romans. The Romans were great builders. We see today lots of remnants of what they built. Even the Kotel, the Romans were the ones, Herod was the one that I think it was about 60 years before the destruction of the temple, or so, maybe a little more, he actually rebuilt the Second Temple, making it glorious. Those walls, the Kotel, that was built by Herod. All the arches and amazing archaeology that they have there were magnificent. Bridges that they built, bathhouses, marketplaces. Till today they have these streets from market, cardos and roads. And Rabbi Shimon was criticizing them, saying, all they do it is not for they don't do it for us. They do it for their own benefit. When they have a bridge, they can charge taxes and make money, and the marketplaces and bathhouses, they're for immoral purposes. He was criticizing them. Word got out, and the Romans were after him. They decreed that he must be executed for criticizing them. And Rabbi Shimon and his son Elazar, they fled, and eventually they went to hide in a cave. They hid in a cave away from the Roman guards. As we see in source number 16, the Talmud records the story. They went and they hid in a cave in the mountains. A miracle occurred, and a carob tree was created for them, as well as a spring of water, and they would study Torah all day. They sat in the cave for 12 years consecutively, away from everybody. Even his own wife didn't know where they were, because they were worried that they might pressure her, torture her to reveal where they were. What were they to eat, hiding in a cave? God made a miracle. A carob tree sprung up, and a spring of water. They were able to eat the carobs the fruits and drink the water. And that's how they sustained themselves for 12 years, consecutive years. What do they do in the cave? They study Torah. Rabbi Shimon studied the teachings, the mystical teachings of Kabbalah, which he later revealed. 12 years. Later on, they came back for another year, a total of 13 years, until a voice told them that the Roman emperor has died and it's safe for them to emerge. 12 years, imagine that. 12 and then another year, all day and all night. Ate some carob, some water just to sustain yourself. And they sat there studying Torah. That's a pretty spiritual kind of life. Rabbi Shimon, his life lived a spiritual life. On the day of his passing, yes, it is a sad time for those that were remaining, the students who no longer can learn from him, and the family members. But his life, when the day of his passing, when his soul can now connect to God without the limits of the body, in an infinite way, it is a day of marriage. It is a day of a wedding celebration. The soul is like the bride. The Jewish people are called the bride of God. God is our like the groom, and we're like the bride. And when the soul, every time we study Torah, we do a mitzvah, we connect to God. It's like a marriage to God. We're uniting with Hashem. And when a person passes on, the soul unites back to God in a more evident way, in a more real way. And especially Rabbi Shimon, the souls that were present there, he said, they're all here to exult in my joy that's leading up to they're leading up to his passing. As the heavenly voice proclaimed, the rejoicing of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon's soul is ascending to heaven to connect in a stronger way to its source, to God. Source 17. On Lag BaOmer, we celebrate Rabbi Shimon's life and the revelation of the esoteric soul of Torah. The revealed part of Torah is like the body, which we all can see, and the soul of Torah is like those mystical teachings. Just as we don't see the soul, we see that the soul is in the body because the person is alive, but we can't see it with our eyes. So too, the soul of Torah, that's the Kabbalah. Today is the day when that soul of Torah was revealed. It is a day to dwell on the primacy of our soul, the purpose of its descent to this world, and the joy that it takes from fostering a connection with God. We don't have to pray to be able to, for our soul to ascend to heaven, but we could realize that we can make that connection while we're alive by following God's will, by studying Torah, by doing our mitzvah, by being kind to others, by being respectful to others, as we mentioned before. That is how our soul to connect to God. Sometimes we get lost with focusing on our bodies, on the revealed part of things, making sure we have good food and watching food shows, and those are good, but it's not enough. We have to also take care of our soul, and food for our soul is when we do a good deed, when we do a mitzvah, and as Jewish people, when we light a Shabbos candle, when we put on tefillin, when we study Torah, that's food for our soul. Today on Lag BaOmer, the life of Rabbi Shimon, when he concluded his life, and his whole life, his soul went back up to heaven. When he revealed to us the soul of Torah, the secrets of the Torah, the things that go beyond what our eyes can see. Today is the day to focus on how our soul is the most important part of our life. Our body is there to service our soul, to give our soul the opportunity to have a hand to wrap tefillin, to have hands to strike a match and light a candle, to have a brain that can study Torah and run to do a mitzvah. The soul is the core of our being and the purpose, the mission of our life. What do we do on this day? The first thing is we mention Jewish unity. And the second idea is just to rejoice, to be happy. Actually, Rabbi Shimon himself, source 18, it was the wish of Rabbi Shimon that we celebrate on this day, the day of his passing, the culmination of his spiritual life, the day that he revealed these teachings. He requested that it should be a day of celebration, a day of getting together, a day of happiness, of rejoicing. All we have to do is be happy, smile, and you'll be fulfilling Rabbi Shimon's wish. Actually, Rabbi Shimon was the first to disseminate these teachings. Hundreds of years later, about 500 years ago, lived the Arizal in Tzfat, in the north of Israel, Rabbi Isaac Luria. And he was the one that took this to a whole new level and began to expound even more on the teachings of Torah and disseminated the teachings of the Kabbalah, even into a wider group of people, explaining it. There's a whole set of books, the writings of the Arizal, as he's known. And later came the Baal Shem Tov, the teachings of Chassidus, the Chassidic philosophy, and brought these teachings in a more tangible and understandable kind of terminology, with parables and bringing them down more to our that we can relate to it. And the Arizal had a student. His name was Avraham, and Avraham was a great pious man, and he was so disturbed by the destruction of the temple. He lived 1,400 years, 1,500 years after the destruction of the temple, but he felt that he wants to have the temple back in Jerusalem, to have all the sacrifices and everything that came along with it. Every day, there's a special prayer that we say on Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, in the summer, when we commemorate the destruction of the temples, it's a fast day. There's a special prayer that we insert into the Shmona Esrei, the Amidah. It's called Nachem. We ask God to comfort us for the destruction of the temple. It's like a sad kind of prayer. We talk about how the city of Jerusalem is on fire and my heart is turning over for all the from grief. We're asking God to comfort us. So the first word of this paragraph that we insert is Nachem. We only say it once a year on Tisha B'Av. But this student, this great man, every day he said it in his prayer. Every day, even on Shabbos, even on holidays, because he felt the pain of the destruction of the temple every day, and that was fine. Even though on Shabbos we're not supposed to mourn, but for him, he really felt it. It was okay. Nothing happened. This is what he did. This was his custom. But one Lag Bomer, he went to the grave of Rabbi Shimon in Meron, and he said this prayer, as he always did every day. And his teacher, the Arizal, came to him and said, Rabbi Shimon, these were great Kabbalist mystics, he said, Rabbi Shimon sent me a message and told me that you're not doing the right thing. You came to my grave and you're talking about sadness, you're talking about the destruction of the temple. And he was very unhappy with him saying that sad prayer. Shabbos, holidays, which is a holy day and a happy day, nothing happened. He didn't get this message. But Lag BaOmer, this is a joyous day. On this day, when he said the sad prayer, solemn prayer, Rabbi Shimon said, no, this is not the way it's supposed to be. Today is a day of happiness. Today is a day of celebration. So yes, now we're living in a hard time. Baruch Hashem seems to be getting better and should continue to get better at a speedy rate, even faster than it's going. But it's a day of celebration. It's a day of rejoicing. Rejoicing with Rabbi Shimon. Source 19, some customs. Some illuminate their synagogues with bright lights, lighting lots of candles to remember Rabbi Shimon, the passing of Rabbi Shimon. We light a candle to commemorate a passing, especially lots of candles for the great Rabbi Shimon. And also because the book that he taught, the book of Zohar, means radiance, means light. As we mentioned, the teachings of the Kabbalah bring light to our lives. In Israel, the tradition is to build bonfires. That's how it comes. It's all about light. And as the Zohar described his passing, his face was shining when he taught these teachings, and there was like a spiritual fire, whatever that means, around his bed. In Israel, they make big bonfires. Kids get busy with that, collecting wood and stuff for weeks in advance. Some eat carob fruit to remember how Rabbi Shimon was sustained miraculously when he was in the cave studying the teachings of the Kabbalah for 12 or 13 years. And for some organized games around bows and arrows. This is a custom. We go out to the field and we play bow and arrow. Many reasons brought for this custom. I'm going to share with you one which the Rebbe, Bavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, taught. Playing with bows and arrows. Be careful. Last year, I believe a kid really hurt himself. You have to be very careful with the bows and arrows. They're quite, they can work quite good. This was the way that they went to battle. When it was a close-up, they used swords and bow and arrows in order to shoot an enemy from a distance. What has the bow and arrow got to do with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the teachings of the mystical teachings of the Torah, the Kabbalah, which bring meaning to our lives, teaching us what's behind, giving us motivation and insight into the inner workings of the Torah. Source number 20. The deadly arrow must be pulled back toward one's own heart in order to strike the heart of the opponent. And the more it is drawn toward oneself, the more distant an adversary he can reach. The way the bow and arrow works is, we'll stop here for a second, you need to pull back, right? You take the arrow, you pull back on the string, the elastic string, and then you let go and the arrow goes. The further you pull back, the farther the arrow will reach. Quite interesting. You want the arrow to go that way, you got to pull this way in order to combat, in order to overcome to get to your target further than you can reach with a sword. Continuing on here, the mystical dimension of Torah guides us in a retreat to our own essence, to the very core of the soul, of our soul. It illuminates the selfless heart of the self, the spark of godliness within us that is one with its creator. The bow and arrow is about digging deep into yourself. So there are two kinds of weapons. You have a sword. When the enemy is right in front of you, it's very apparent. The evil is apparent. You take a sword and that's it. But in order to reach into an enemy which is a bit obscure, a bit not so clear, a bit distant, more refined, more not so apparent, you need to take the bow, pull into yourself, retreat into yourself, and then you can eliminate that evil. So too with the Torah. We have the revealed parts of Torah. We have the Torah, the mitzvahs, do this and don't do that. Those combat the evil that is apparent. Then we have the deeper evil. Sometimes inside of ourselves we have our ego. We have our selfishness. We have obstacles to overcome. Things that are not so clear, not always evil so apparent. Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe God will understand. And we have to look into ourselves, retreat into ourselves. The deeper ideas of the Torah give us the tools, like a bow and arrow, to recognize that our neshama, our soul, is one with God. To illuminate, when we study the teachings of Kabbalah, we get in touch with our souls, which are one with its creator, with God. Our souls are selfless at their core. We need to bring that out to the surface. And then we have the power to eliminate even the evil that is covered up, even evil in the darkest of places, even living now in a world, and bring morality, bring ethics, bring godliness and spirituality to all places with the power of Kabbalah, with the power of the teachings of the Torah, to look beyond what we see on the surface, to look at the core of every being, to look at their souls, to look at their true identity that is beyond what our eyes can see, to look at their neshama. The Pnimius HaTorah, the hidden parts, the inner parts of the Torah, which was revealed today on Lag BaOmer by Rabbi Shimon, gives us the ability to respect one another as we rectify what the students of Rabbi Akiva lacked. We recognize that each human being is created in the image of God and has a neshama, as a soul, a selfless soul, and strives to do the right thing. With the help of the teachings of Kabbalah, we can eliminate, just as we can eliminate an enemy, a distant enemy, an obscure enemy, with the bow and arrow. That is the idea, the deeper idea behind the custom of playing with bows and arrows. So hopefully now you understand a little bit more about this holiday, the holiday of Lag BaOmer. We understand that Lag means Lamed Gimel, 30 and 3. It's the 33rd day of Omer. Omer means the bundle of barley, the sheaf, the measurement, about 2 grams that was brought into temple as the first offering of the new crop of the season. recognizing that it's all from God. We count 7 weeks. 33rd day of the Omer is Lag BaOmer. It is the day that commemorates two special things of our history. Number one, that the students, the great yeshiva, the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva ceased to die. Their plague stopped. What they were lacking was respect for one another. And we learned that love and respect need to go hand in hand. We need to have a proper balance for a healthy relationship. So we reflect the restrictions are lifted on this day, and we reflect on bringing this into our lives. Respecting one another as well as loving one another, reaching out for others, but at the same time giving them their space. We commemorate the life of Rabbi Shimon, who passed away on this day, and the great teachings of Kabbalah, the hidden parts of the Torah, which were revealed on this day. We focus in on the primacy of our souls, giving sustenance to our souls, not just our bodies, celebrating with the celebration, with the rejoicing of Rabbi Shimon. Every time we do a mitzvah, we are rejoicing, we are being wed with God. We are connecting to God. We are uniting with Hashem. And every time we do a good deed, we help out another. This is the theme of the holiday: Jewish unity, getting together, Jewish pride, Jewish being happy, rejoicing. This is the day of Lag BaOmer. So take some time today to look up, to read something else, to watch a virtual parade or Lag BaOmer rally or gathering. You can find one on Chabad.org. There's something live, I believe, now or starting soon, as well as focusing in on these teachings that we studied today. Just conclude with a little joke here. One man, he was the boss at his company, and nobody was really giving him any attention. No one was really giving him too much respect as is due for the boss. So one day he comes in with a sign, and he puts it on his office with big words: "I'm the boss over here. I'm the boss around here." And he's hopeful that this will remind everybody that he's the boss, and he should receive the respect due to him. A couple hours later, one of his workers, his employers, his workers come in, and they tell him, "Your wife just called. She wants her sign back." Talk about who's the boss around here. Okay. That was about respect. We should learn to love each other, to respect each other. If you have any questions, you can post in the comments. Do you have a class studying Zohar? So Zohar is this book. The way it's printed is, the actual text of the Zohar is about 3 volumes, but it's hard to understand it. The Aramaic wording and and ideas that are talked about there. So there is many books many translations and explanations given. It can be a big set, a whole shelf, 30 books explaining it. So we don't have a class studying Zohar. You said including the Sefirot. So the Sefirot are the emanations. The person is comprised of 10 expressions of the soul. 3 are the intellect, and then there are the 7 attributes. We always talk about the 7 days of the week, and these are the Sefirot, which is similar, very much connected to the counting of the Omer, because there's 49 days. And there are 7 attributes. There are the 10, and there's the 7, which are the feelings and emotions. 7 emotions, and 7 times 7 is each of these 7 attributes, the way they are comprised, the way they are included from the other ones. Every day of the Omer. It's all discussion for another time. So we don't study the Zohar text directly, but many of the teachings of the Zohar are brought in the teachings of Chassidus, and we quote them often in our classes and lectures. You use Dan. I'm not familiar. I'll check that up. Interesting. Yes, there are in English. There's translated into Hebrew from Aramaic, and mainly you need some words in between to help the sentences flow. Put one thing to the other and understand certain terms that are brought in the Zohar. Okay, any other questions? You can put them in the comments. Lag Bomer is always very exciting. Big parades in Crown Heights. The Rebbe initiated, he encouraged all Jewish communities to make parades, to a day of Jewish unity, of Jewish pride, especially for children to get together and like a full parade with floats. In Crown Heights, they would do it only on Sundays, so even Jewish children that attend public school can join in. Thousands and thousands of children. Every second or third year or so, it ends up on a Sunday. And the Rebbe himself would participate and be at the parade, sometimes for a long time. The Rebbe was very busy, but the Rebbe felt obviously very important. And more than once, the Rebbe had a special coin minted. I believe 1990 and 1991, the Rebbe had a special coin minted with an emblem of Lag Bomer, of a bonfire, and the words of about Jewish unity. And the Rebbe personally, gave it out to be distributed to all the children. Sometimes 20,000, more than 20,000, boys and girls would get together at 770 Eastern Parkway. They would close off the street, and they still continue to do it when it's on Sundays. But when the Rebbe came out, it was extraordinary. There's videos of it. The Rebbe would give a special talk, concert, and from the army they would come, from the Navy they would have representatives, and each school would build, and it's still done today, and in many communities they build a float on a truck, using their creativity to bring out the ideas of Torah. So let's say tefillin, they'll make a huge box of tefillin and bring it to life, and all different kinds of mitzvahs and Torah ideas, and bring out and display it. And the Rebbe would look at each one, and all the children. Now in Crown Heights, they even though it's not Sunday, but because we're all virtual, so they are doing something, and they have floats, trucks that different people worked on, going around all over Crown Heights, so people don't have to come together, but they can see it from their homes, and as well as many other Jewish communities, I believe, are doing this. So it's a day of parades, of strengthening ourselves, and of rejoicing. Okay, so I'll sign off now. Just remind everybody, tomorrow night, the women are getting together at 7 o'clock on Zoom for the Women's Circle. Thursday evening, we'll be back on Facebook, on Mrs. Brickman's page for Around Our Community at 7:30. And back here for Lunch and Learn next week. If you have any suggestions, any specific topics you would like us to cover, feel free to message me. Happy Lag Bomer, and have a wonderful day.